The drowned palate, secrets in the salt and stone. A summer's canvas becomes a map of murder. An artist's retreat on Martha's Vineyard, 1926. A famed painter is pulled from the tide pool below a crumbling estate. The waves whisper the truth, if you can read the watercolors before they fade. Prologue, the man who trusted the tide. He went to the sea because it had always told him the truth. The house lied, people lied, patronesses lied in silk and pearls and careful letters. But the tide never pretended to be anything but hungry. Caspar Wilder stood on the black edge of the cove with his shoes in one hand and his sketchbook in the other, the July night sliding cool fingers under his collar. Above him, Ashford House hunched against the sky, its windows mostly dark, its silhouette like a ship half sunk into the bluff. Music from the gramophone had faded an hour ago. Laughter had drained away. Only the generator's low static hum remained. And then, minutes ago, even that had died. In the blackout, the house had become a shape without eyes. He liked it better that way. "Always more honest in the dark, aren't you?" he murmured to the sea. A wave nipped at his toes in answer. He set the sketchbook on a dry rock and rolled his trousers to the knee. The tide was at its restless turning, the flood pausing before it swung toward slack. Moonlight smeared silver over the water. Clouds shifted like slow bruises above. Behind him, on the path down from the house, small stones clicked under someone's careful step. "You followed," he said, without turning. "I wondered if you would." No answer. Caspar smiled without humor. "If you've something to say, say it where the tide can hear. She hates a coward." A shape came into view, a darker darkness in the mouth of the path. A figure paused just beyond the ragged grass and salt-twisted shrubs. Not Eleanor, too still. Not Amos, too slight and no tobacco flare. Not Theo, too controlled. The shadow said at last, low, "You shouldn't have painted that one." "Which?" asked Caspar, though he already knew. "The cove, the gate," the voice said. He chuckled. "Truth makes people nervous. That's how I know it's working." A new silence then, thick as torn paper. The sea moved around his calves, cool and deceptively soft. He waded closer to the iron gate that guarded the tide pool. It rose from the rock like the remains of a drowned prison, black bars slick with weed and barnacle. The hinges groaned when the waves shoved. He put a hand on one bar, testing. "Loose," he muttered. "Ought to tell Amos before some fool drowns himself." Behind him, footsteps descended the last of the path. Closer now. The sound of bracelets? No? Maybe? Or metal buttons? Or a watch chain? The wind shredded clues. "I've always trusted you to see. That's the trouble," the voice said. "Don't start confessing. I haven't decided whether to forgive you." "I can't let you," the voice said. The words were wrong, the tone not angry, not pleading, simply resolved. Something thin and strong brushed past his wrist quick as a snake. He glanced down. A cord, looping the bars. Not like that. The gate shouldn't. The wave hit harder this time, shoving him against cold iron. The gate no longer swung with him. It bit into his ribs. He tried to twist away and found himself pinned. Bars at his chest, stone at his spine, water climbing. "Stop!" he snapped, suddenly breathless. "Enough of your theatrics." No answer. Only the wet creak of a knot drawing tight. A slip of panic rose, unfamiliar and unwelcome. "You think this will look like an accident," he said, forcing a laugh, "but you've never understood the sea. She tattles, she keeps things." Moonlight slid out from behind thin cloud and struck the water white. Over the top edge of the bars he could just see the figure on the rocks, a silhouette caught between house and horizon. Not close enough to touch, close enough to watch. "You forged his name," he gasped as the next wave smacked his chest. Whose name had been forged? So many lies stacked now. "You think they won't find out? You think they won't see?" The water punched his mouth. Salt surged in. His fingers fumbled for the knot, but the cord, simple, pretty, vicious, had been arranged where tides and panic made it impossible to reach. Another wave. His shoulder slammed metal. His watch chain snagged. He thought of brushes, of color, of 7 white gulls in a circle, of a moon painted wrong on purpose. He had left a message. He hoped someone would be stubborn enough to read it. The voice came one last time, blurred now by rushing water. "You shouldn't have forced my hand." His reply dissolved as the next wave rose and did not let him speak. The sea closed over his face. For a moment he fought like any man who realizes too late that death is closer than pride. His hands clawed at iron, his watch chain snapped, his lungs roared. Then the tide pressed him gentle and inexorable against the bars. The iron didn't move, the knot didn't slip. When the wave drew back, Caspar Wilder did not. The tide pool filled with a terrible kind of stillness. Above, Ashford House showed one lit window for a few heartbeats, a square of yellow watching. Then it blinked out. The silhouette on the rock stepped back into shadow and was gone. Only the sea remained, working at its ancient business. It tugged once at an end of teal ribbon, now caught on the hinge. It tasted violet perfume, tobacco smoke, turpentine, and fear. It considered. The sea did not hurry. It never had to. It would keep what had been given to it for a time. Then, when men with nets and women with notebooks came asking hard questions, it would give something back. A body, a stopped watch, a threaded clue in its teeth. Because if there was one thing the sea despised, it was a lie told in its name.
By sunrise, the sea would give back what it had taken. But not everything it returned could be seen. Every artist at Ashford House came chasing beauty. None expected to find death waiting with a palette knife and the patience of the tide. Before the first brushstroke dries, before the fog clears from the cove, There will be whispers, rivalries, and the kind of lies that can only live among those who call themselves friends. Someone knows what really happened that night, and before the sea rises again, Honor Caldwell will find them. But first, let's step inside the house where it began. Who would you trust in a house full of artists? The patron, who smiles too easily? The protégé, who owes too much? Or the muse, who's learned how to lie with her eyes? Stay tuned for Chapter 1, The House with a Breath.